was just waiting for YouTube to go live there. Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back with another video. As per usual, I'm recording on 2 platforms at the moment, on Facebook and YouTube. Hope you enjoy it, and welcome to part 2 of my dreams for AC Monza, and probably a time for more generally as well. But I just remembered that I forgot to say something in the intro. I forgot to do a different intro, but hopefully I'll remember to do that in part 3 and call 4. I've been thinking of trying to change my intro a little bit, but anyway, these are pointers number 11 to 20 as per usual. And as ever, I'd love to know what you think, especially Monza fans and fans of football generally. What do you think could benefit the club Monza, or even Italian football generally, especially the national team and club teams in Italy generally, though, as well, or Italian football generally. So here you go. So these are points number 11 to 20. So number 11, I would love to see Monza, as well as the Italian football teams, generally have as many academies as possible, as I've mentioned. But I think I'll give my use of alliterations like made in Monza, made in Milan, football in Monza. Well, I suppose that's not an alliteration, but I'd love to promote football in Italy generally, like that's in Milan, Monza, Turin, or wherever else in Italy, Rome, obviously, or wherever, and to see more academies and for players to be given opportunities to try different skills and make mistakes, make plenty of mistakes. This time I'm wearing my Inter Man cap because I love all the Italian teams, but I know I mentioned how I'd love to see more the best possible players, coaches, coaching staff, directors of football, dietitians, managers and whatnot in Italian football, similar with Celtic. So yeah, having the best possible players, but also seeing how they could develop the academies, like made in Monza, seeing how they could help young players to learn different skills. So producing the best possible goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders and strikers to benefit club and country, so Monza and the national team in this case. So I think that would be pretty cool. Number 12, as I say, made in Monza in this case. So seeing how they can give opportunities for players to, in my opinion, it would be good to have trial and error where you can make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. So you're always developing. And I think if a player is discouraged from making mistakes, then it might put them off from trying different skills. To me, the goalkeepers should just keep it very simple, try and stay in their box as much as possible. Sometimes towards the end of the game, if there's someone, they'll maybe go up for a corner. I'm giving away a lot of strategies, but one thing I've learned, I think, from, or been reminded of, I suppose, from Celtic, which sadly didn't work out. Celtic's manager, but didn't work. That his inability to be flexible and to change things up, basically. Inflexibility, stubbornness, and I suppose arrogance, or it certainly came across as arrogance, which I think is a bit unfair, maybe because he is from France originally, so it could. It came across to many Celtic supporters, rightly or wrongly, as arrogance, and at least stubbornness, at worst arrogance, and at best stubbornness, and an unwillingness to change, and I suppose being a creature of habit, as I know in these videos I do in a certain way, and I do struggle to make changes. But yeah, I think it shows a manager has to be able to be flexible enough to say, this isn't working, let's try something else, at least for a while. The press isn't working well enough, we need to sit back a bit, or we need to press more. And if you're too stubborn and too sort of set in your ways, tempting as that is, it can mean, I know it's different all country level, of course, as well. One thing I keep forgetting to say, again, to remind myself, thinking about 12 could be 21 backwards, I guess, but 21 is, I'd love to connect with, or whatever the difference is, and basically whatever could to with my fellow Italian fans about our views about Italian football. So I'd love to connect with the Italian Football Podcast, the IFTV, the Italian Football TV, and as many other podcasts as possible, even from like rival Serie A clubs, and especially fans of the national team, and even like Inter, AC Milan, well, no, Interman cap, but even Juventus, Interman, AC Milan. Well, I'll say even, but equally like Roma and other teams, but even rival fans, I'll say like Lazio or whatever. In Roma's case, so yeah, to connect together and discuss what's best for Italian football, for Italian football teams like Monza, the national team, and club teams generally in Italy, football development in Italy generally, I'll say club and country level. Yeah, I think young people, they need to be given a chance. Midfielders, at least one of the centre mids. I love to play 4-4, too much away perhaps, but I am quite rigid with the system, but I perhaps should try and be more flexible if I was a coach or a manager, to say that if this doesn't work, let's try something else. And I said I'd love to go. I've said in the past I'd love to go to Italy, and I still have a dream of mine, like on the bucket list, to discuss ways to improve Italian football. Similar with Celtic, and I want to discuss Italian football much more. Yeah, I think being given a chance, at least one centre mid and the wingers and the strikers, to be given a chance to, whether you play one up front or whatever system you play. I think the midfielders and strikers, presumably they have at least one striker. I can't believe Celtic doesn't have a proper striker or whatever, supposedly. I mean, they would probably argue we have one, but whether he's good enough, whether they're good enough for players. But anyway, back to Monza, I'll say, well, an Italian football, but yeah, having the best possible squad players, so sort of thing. But yeah, being flexible and that kind of thing. And I think midfielders being able to try videos and see, try that trick in training, and if it doesn't come off, not being told, oh, don't try that again, skill, but to be taught to keep going, and if you make a mistake, yeah, back up, even if you're a goalkeeper or a defender, but especially more attacking players, like if you're a striker, afford to try something that doesn't work, as long as the midfielders and defenders do their job, hopefully, and goalkeeper if necessary, who I think should be some back, then you are able to be more creative and take by trial and error, basically, quite simply. But I'm going to move on to point number 13 on that note. And try. As I say, my love for Italian football is quite a selfish thing, and that's one reason why, symbolically, I thought I would focus on that in January, because I think it's the first month of the year, as I said before in previous videos, including in part 1. So thinking about how like January is the first month of the year, I think I'm looking after number 1. So I thought I would stick to Italian football, especially Juventus and the national team back in clubs like Monza. But unfortunately, I know Italian football does have like a racism, problem, violence, political extremes. I would prefer Italians to be political centre right, libertarian even, but which I suppose is kind of centre right in a way. But yeah, it's Italian society, but I love to see football being a unifying thing. Like I said, I'm going to include point number 14. Yeah. Utilising migration and giving migrants and refugees rights. And as I said before, again, I know I don't encourage illegal immigration, but they could be dealing that passionate about football again, that they said we want to include those with a stereotype that like people from Africa can be more athletic or anything like that, but it's just because I only support Italy in and for the football, so I'm looking at the football angle. So yeah, including migrants and solving problems with football. I talk about peace through football. A campaign to discourage militarism and weapons and wars and weapons trade and that kind of thing. That'd be the peace you want to see, if you like. So to cut back on what I was going to say point number 11. I know I'm trying to focus on Monza and football and that kind of thing. The international team and Monza itself, in this case, more specifically, but and Italian football more generally, as I say. But politically, I disagree with and discourage illegal immigrant. And for me personally, I would say anyone who comes into a country illegally, I think, should be deported ASAP, but also in the most humane way possible. And I think there should be a way for people to migrate legally, sort of sucker for sticking to the law and that kind of thing. So within the letter of the law, I like to obey the law and that kind of thing. I suppose it's because I kind of, even though I'm not hugely religious, I kind of believe in God and like obey the law and that kind of thing. And if you don't obey the law, like, where does it end? How far do you take things? I guess. Yeah, to me personally, anyone who comes into a country, whether that's Britain, America, China, Italy, Spain, or whatever other country, I think if they don't come in legally, I think you should do it humanely. Also, you wouldn't say you need to leave tomorrow and not be able to pack your stuff and say bye to your friends or whatever, especially if you have children like in your school or whatever. But I think they should be given time to pack and say, like, you've got to go through legal channels. Another thing is that can discourage people from coming in illegally if they know they're going to get deported. So there is that. But when it comes to Italy specifically, I'm talking about time for one Italy, I would love for them to. I often think of like a migrational policy where they allow people, anyone who comes in legally, and I think priority to those with a skill or talent or ability. Any other citizen, if you break the law, you get the same punishment as any other citizen, I guess. I suppose maybe that could be part of the deal for like visas and passports or whatever, but that does open up a red herring or whatever. But also, I think, so I encourage like obeying the law as much as possible, including migration and whatnot. So I think there should be legal routes. But with Italy, they could say those with skill or talent for football, those from the diaspora, and those from like former colonies as well. But yeah, a campaign to discourage investment and sponsorship into war, which peace project. Number one and most popular sport, best. Because if I say it's the best, but I'm one of the few people that supports it. If you look at it in terms of numbers, sometimes I joke, like jokingly say that cricket is rubbish or whatever. But if you look at the numbers, more people, so I'm aware, participate in and watch and get involved in and follow and support football than any other sport. So to me, that makes it the number one, which I'm thankful for. And I hope to keep it number one, encourage more people to get involved. I mean, some people say in football that when there's lots of money involved, they say that ruins the game. But for me, I find transfers really interesting. Obviously not everyone agrees, but I'd love to see as much money as possible into Italian and Celtic. But I'd love to see that in football more generally, but obviously because I'm a fan of Italian and Celtic, as I mentioned before, I'm going to focus obviously more on Italian or soccer or whatever you call it, and Celtic, and not so much other teams. But I'd love to see that campaign in football. And again, I'd love to see it more specifically for Italian football and Celtic, and even people who are not into football and whatnot. Maybe if they say I'd rather go to football than to wars, the weapons trade and that kind of thing, all these wars that go on, I'd rather see invested in football, even if I don't find it that good or ethical or whatever. But it's much more ethical than being spent on weapons of mass destruction. So again, peace through football, peace and love and positivity, and that kind of thing. So solving problems as well through football, like climate change, warming, whatever the difference is. I suppose they're connected, and again, tackling wars and violence, and building bridges and things like that. So I love to see Italian and Celtic being involved in that kind of thing, with working together with FIFA and UEFA and whatnot, to try to, let's say, tackle problems. I love the football analogy of like tackle, boot out problems and that kind of thing. So yeah, to make the world a better place through football. Again, working with FIFA and UEFA and whatnot. Number 15, I talked in part one, I'd say, about what Monza fans would like. I'm talking about Italian football more generally, but I'd love to know. I hope Monza fans out there and Italian football fans more generally as well, so we are, but especially Monza fans, and maybe fans will get involved in the discussion. I'm talking about like what sort of things you want to see from Monza, like youth development and things like that. I'd love for there to be committees and think tanks, including from former players, and people involved in the clubs and local businesses, for instance, talk about how to brand Monza and its football generally, Serie A and that kind of thing. I think at the moment Monza are in Serie B, unfortunately for them, but if I'm not mistaken, but they were in Serie A for a while. But yeah, no, I'm saying Italian more generally, but in this case, let's say Monza, how can they be marketed better? How can they have like 5-10 year plans, partners, investors, and that kind of thing, basically, and as much money as possible? What are the ways to attract investment and put the best possible players, coaches, coaching staff, directors of football, dietitians, managers, and whatnot? And basically, like I said in part one and point number two, like what could they learn from other clubs and like local businesses? As I say, I often say like local businesses because they know how to attract investment and things like that. So people who have got experience of attracting investment and sponsorship and whatnot, maybe they could help to look into like how the club could attract that investment, and hopefully they'll spend a lot on buying better players and things like that, and bringing in the best possible coaches, coaching staff, managers, and that kind of thing as I talked about, but also investing in the academies and things like that. So what would benefit the club in the short and long term, like maybe 5-10 year plans as well, so new investors coming in and sponsors and whatnot. What could be good for 5-10 year plans, and maybe new managers even if they come in, like should talk about their 5-10 year vision and that kind of thing, coaches and all those involved in the club basically. And again, in terms of more generally, I'd love to see that sort of thing. And number 17, as I say, I'd love to see Italian football produce, especially Italians themselves, like the best possible players, the new Zidane, Messi, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, the two Ronnies as I call them, the Brazilian version, the Portuguese version, and that kind of thing. So producing the best possible players, but also like goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, and strikers, and squad players, and that kind of thing. So as I say, I'd love to see that in Italian football more generally. But as I say, I'm trying to focus more on Monza. As I said in part one, again, I know that was a bit, I said I'm a bit late, and it should probably. But yeah, and also if you can find out any facts, or you know any facts or anything, information generally about Monza, please post it in the comment. Please post those sort of things in the comment, either on Facebook, I'm sure, or YouTube, probably both. So yeah, seeing what they could produce, and again, I'd love to see teams like Monza producing the next Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Zidane, Pele, and players like that. Especially Italian ones, so they can benefit the club and country. I say that point number 17 because I think like imaginations. Imagine if so, it'd be hard to imagine Monza having the next Ronaldinho, Zidane, and players like that. But it would be pretty cool if they could, especially if they were Italian players themselves. So like made in Monza and that kind of thing. I think that'd be pretty cool. Number 18, as I say, I hope that they'll do a lot of football for good. And again, please forgive me, sorry, for not mentioning, sorry, for not being, for being too lazy, rather, sorry, please forgive me for losing my train of thought. Please forgive me for being too lazy to check out, like, whether Monza has a foundation. It's one thing I probably could have checked out, but I completely forgot as well. Not just laziness, like a memory problems and that kind of thing as well, basically. But yeah, so they could have a foundation if they don't already do so, and look at like what sort of things they could do to make the world a better place. And again, hopefully work with FIFA and UEFA to promote a better image of the beautiful game and tackle like corruption, crime, and things like that through football. Well, that's in football itself, and even through football generally, like getting young people to be involved in football and that kind of thing. Number 19, as part of that, they could help like software developers in developing nations and that kind of thing. And number 20, they could also help STEM education, especially for people from disadvantaged backgrounds, whether that's in Italy or other parts of the world, especially in developing nations. And hopefully that will come back to benefit the club. And on that note, I'm out.